The CEO said it with a smile. "We're bringing in someone new. Just a better fit for where we're headed." They called it strategy. I called it theft. Because the system they handed over, I built it. And I never signed over the patent. They thought I'd walk away quietly, but I don't throw tantrums, I write protocols. And when they launched without me, they didn't realize the countdown had already started. 48 hours. That's how long it took for the system to begin forgetting them. I knew something was wrong the moment Ava walked past without looking up. Not a nod, not her usual half smile. Just a blink too fast, too rehearsed, and then she disappeared down the hallway. It was subtle. Most people wouldn't have noticed. But I'd been working at Helix Core Technologies for 7 years. I helped build the predictive analytics engine that powered over 200 hospital systems across the country. And Ava, Nathan's executive assistant, had never once ignored me. Not even on days when she was juggling 10 calendars and 3 board prep meetings. So when she passed my desk without a glance, I didn't move. I didn't call after her. I just turned my chair slowly and watched the back of her head disappear behind the frosted glass of the executive wing. Then I opened my Slack. 3 new private channels, all tagged with #PulseSync rollout, all locked, no invite. That was odd. I had written the data core for PulseSync. The system's name had been mine. I pitched it in a late-night deck over ramen and cold coffee during the first pandemic wave. And I'd been leading every internal test since Q1. I toggled to my calendar, still empty. I checked again, nothing for the day, nothing upcoming. That wasn't unheard of. My stand-ups were often ad hoc depending on what tier was glitching. But today felt curated. Like someone had walked through my digital space and scrubbed every trace of me from the meeting pipeline. Then came the admin alert. Reminder Horizon Room reserved 9 hours, 10:30. PulseSync strategy session. Please avoid messaging during this window unless urgent. No Elena Park on the attendee list. But the name that did stand out, Dr. Miles Trent. I didn't know the name, but he was scheduled to present. Under role Chief Systems Advisor, External. My mouse froze mid-scroll. Chief what? No announcement. No team-wide intro, no onboarding notice. Just a name slotted in where mine had always been. My stomach didn't drop. It locked. Cold and slow, like the kind of chill that warns a storm is already above you, and you just hadn't looked up yet. At 9:07 a.m., a photo landed in the company-wide announcements channel. A blurry snapshot, probably taken from someone's phone discreetly angled from the back corner of the Horizon conference room. But the faces were clear enough. Nathan Greer, the CEO, sat at the head of the table, his signature knit gray tie slightly askew, coffee untouched. Ava, ever composed, stood beside him, arms folded like a gatekeeper. 2 compliance officers, 1 investor rep from Wilcox Ventures, and at the far end of the room, a man I had never seen before, Dr. Miles Trent, mid-40s, dressed in a slate blue blazer with a lapel pin I didn't recognize. He stood confidently gesturing toward a projected slide behind him, a laser pointer in one hand, the other tucked casually in his pocket like he owned the hour. The slide read PulseSync 2.0, Modular Predictive Integration for Scalable Healthcare. My mouth went dry, not because of the phrase I had coined that. It came from a memo I sent 6 months ago to Nathan outlining the next evolution of our diagnostic inference model, but because of the UI mock-up next to it. That was my design. I stared at the screen longer than I should have, not blinking, not thinking, just calculating. Trent wasn't advising the rollout. He was presenting it, without me, without acknowledgement, without permission. I tapped into the back-end version control. Server logs confirmed what my gut already knew. The latest build of PulseSync had been cloned at 2:16 a.m. 2 days ago, accessed through an admin override. No comments, no changelog note, no review request, just copied. Someone had taken my code, stripped the wrappers, rebranded it, and handed it to a stranger. I leaned back slowly in my chair. It wasn't the first time someone had stolen work in tech, but it might have been the first time they did it this publicly, this cleanly, and still expected me to smile and hand over my login credentials. I stared at the picture again. Dr. Miles Trent was smiling, but all I saw was a ghost wearing my legacy. At 11:02 a.m., a calendar ping slid across my screen. Subject, Office 5C, Executive Check-in, from Ava Chen, no details. Just a time, 11:15. I didn't ask questions, I didn't respond. I just stood, grabbed my blazer, and walked the long, glass-paneled hallway like someone headed to their own exit interview. Office 5C was already open when I arrived. Nathan stood behind his desk, arms folded, not tense, not casual, just prepared. Ava sat in the corner, her laptop already open, fingers resting lightly on the keyboard. She didn't meet my eyes. "Thanks for coming in," Nathan said. "We won't take much of your time." I didn't sit. "Let's not pretend this is a conversation." A pause, then a faint smile. "Fair enough." He gestured toward the small folder on the desk. Heavy stock paper, subtle emboss. It screamed legal had a hand in this. "We're transitioning strategic ownership of Pulse Sync to a new phase. Dr. Trent brings a systems-level perspective that aligns with our investor engagement strategy." "You mean he talks better than I do?" I said flatly. Nathan didn't flinch. "You've been critical to our foundation, but the next step is visibility, presentation, optics." I looked at the folder but didn't touch it. "You're replacing a system architect with a keynote speaker. We're offering 3-month severance, full benefits, and professional references." His tone stayed neutral. "We'll need your access credentials by EOD." Ava finally looked up, only for a second, then back down. "You already cloned the core engine," I said quietly. "What exactly do you still need from me?" Continuity, Nathan replied. "The rollout must remain stable. Good luck with that." I turned to leave. "Elena," he said as I reached the door. "Let's keep this smooth. No need to make it difficult." I paused. "Just enough." "You didn't replace me because I was difficult, Nathan. You replaced me because I was invisible. And now you're betting that what I built will keep working, even without the person who built it." And then with calm precision, I closed the door behind me. No slamming, no drama. But if he listened closely, he would have heard the sound of a knife being drawn. I didn't go back to my desk. Instead, I took the side stairwell down to the sublevel where the auxiliary systems lived. A room most execs never stepped into, where the hum of heat sinks and rack fans whispered secrets they didn't even know existed. The server terminal at the far end still recognized my biometrics. No flags, no alerts. They'd fired me from the table upstairs. But down here, I was still logged in. I plugged in my personal device. An older laptop I kept unregistered, used only for architecture simulations and sandbox models. It wasn't company issued. It didn't follow their policies, which made it perfect. I authenticated. No MFA prompt, no email ping. I was already inside. And that's where it lived, the engine. EVA Core, engineered variable architecture. Our predictive inference stack, built to scan massive patient datasets, parse patterns across specialties, and make real-time triage decisions under latency constraints. I had written every line. And underneath it, something else. Quiet, latent, protocol theta. A safeguard I'd built years ago, not malicious, not destructive, just cautious. Every 48 hours, EVA pinged for a master hash signature, a biometric linked key that lived only in my possession. If it didn't find it, nothing crashed. But small things slowed. Accuracy thresholds dipped by fractions. Inference speeds gained milliseconds. Confidence intervals widened subtly, indistinguishable at first, but compounded across 10,000 diagnostics per day. Hospitals would start to doubt. Investors would start to ask questions. And no one, not even a keynote speaker in a slate blue blazer, could answer them, because they didn't even know it was there. I checked the logs. Last ping 12 hours ago. I disabled the public dashboard overlay, set protocol theta to standby, encrypted the current state, copied it quietly to a sandbox directory. Then I wiped my access trail, not sloppily, not obviously, just clean. By the time the system began to drift, it wouldn't scream, it wouldn't even groan, it would whisper. And the only person who would recognize that sound was already walking out the door. The first message came in at 6:41 the next morning. "Hey Elena, weird question. Is PulseSync supposed to run pediatric scans through the cardiology model now?" It was from Miguel, a QA engineer I used to mentor. Friendly, curious, naive. I didn't answer. 15 minutes later, another ping, getting some odd outputs. One flagged a stage 4 lymphoma from an ankle sprain, confused the ER tech. Then a third. EVA's starting to lag on batch sequences. Nothing major yet. But inference timing's off. I sipped my coffee in silence, eyes on my own screen. No one knew I could still see the logs. I wasn't in the system, not officially. But I'd built mirror tunnels years ago, read-only ports designed for off-grid validation. Nobody else used them. Nobody else knew how. From where I sat on my couch in pajamas, I watched the PulseSync dashboard flicker yellow. Just enough, not to crash, not to fail, but enough to make professionals hesitate. By 8:12 a.m., several partner hospitals had flagged concern reports through the automated compliance queue, small anomalies, delays, misroutes, the kind of things that only matter when patients are waiting, the kind of things that investors notice when those reports get aggregated. At 8:36, Nathan called. I didn't answer. At 8:41, a second call, then a third. I waited until the fourth, just long enough for voicemail fatigue to set in. Then I picked up. Elena, he said without preamble, there's an issue with PulseSync. We need you to take a look. Oh, I replied, stirring my coffee. Isn't that Dr. Trent's domain now? A pause. He's investigating, but certain modules are locked behind dependencies we can't trace. It's slowing diagnostics. I let the silence stretch. You replaced me, Nathan, but you forgot to ask what I left behind. Elena, please, patients are involved. We need you back, just temporarily, advisory basis. My rates tripled. I want full system access, no Trent, no red tape. I answer only to the CTO. He didn't argue, he didn't dare. 10 minutes later, the agreement was in my inbox. 12 minutes later, I was back inside. The heartbeat of the system stuttered, then blinked, waiting. By 9:03 a.m., a stripped-down login arrived in my inbox. No frills, no protocol stack. Just a direct access key and a note system integrity assessment. Urgent. Please advise. Nathan. I took my time. No rush, no panic. Let the silence teach them what absence felt like. By 9:21, I was back in PulseSync. The core logs lit up like a stress test, diagnostics, misrouted prediction thresholds, slipping triage models, defaulting to fallback states. It wasn't a crash. It was worse uncertainty. The system wasn't broken, it was hesitating. And in healthcare, hesitation costs lives. I patched the immediate loops just enough to stop the worst delays. Then I isolated the protocol Theta Echo and left it dormant. Let them breathe, for now. At 10:07, Nathan called again. I let it go to voicemail. At 10:11, Ava texted boards asking who built the logic tree. Jason Wilcox thought it was Miles. Raj corrected him. I think they're piecing it together. I smiled. Not because I wanted revenge, because the truth had started speaking for itself. At 10:32, my terms went out. Triple my previous salary, full autonomy over PulseSync's architecture, direct reporting to the CTO, no visibility restrictions, no interaction with Dr. Miles Trent. And one last line, formal written attribution in all investor materials for Eva Core Design, Elena Park. At 10:58, Nathan replied, We'll need time to review with legal. I didn't respond. At 11:12, Ava followed up. Jason just walked out of the conference room. He looked pale. At 11:19, a PDF slid into my inbox. Subject Executive Consulting Agreement, Elena Park duration, 6 months, terms accepted in full. Authorization immediate. At 11:23, I reconnected to the system not as an employee, not as a ghost, but as the only one the system still trusted. And somewhere in the background, I imagined Miles Trent refreshing his dashboard and realizing he was no longer inside. The message came from someone I didn't expect. Subject: I think we need to talk. From L. Connors, Internal Compliance. Lyra Connors was Helix Core's senior audit officer, sharp, dry, unapologetically clinical. The kind of person you didn't want pinging you unless something had already gone very, very wrong. We met in the lower diagnostics wing, neutral ground. No glass walls, no badge scanners, just coffee machines, cables, and too many old monitors. She didn't waste time. I ran a regression audit on the PulseSync sandbox. I nodded. Find something, you tell me, she said, and slid a tablet toward me. What I saw made my breath pause. 37 input sequences, all injected into a testing environment 2 weeks prior, all stripped of context labels. They routed malformed data sets through the cardiac module, she explained. then used the resulting misfires to justify a need for system overhaul. My mouth went dry. Let me guess. Miles drafted the summary. She nodded once, then packaged it as part of the investor rebrand initiative. I looked closer. The logs didn't lie. Session tags matched. Credentials originated from Trent's workstation. And worse, he'd cleared the flags after each injection. Classic false flag setup, Lyra said flatly. Screw the engine, then claim it can't steer. Can we prove he meant to sabotage? I already have, she said, then leaned back, folded her arms. I've worked compliance long enough to know when something smells strategic. You built a stable system. He made it look unstable because chaos gets funding. I stared at her. Why tell me? Because I don't like seeing engineers cut out of their own work. And if I want to escalate this? Lyra's eyes narrowed, calculating, assessing risk. Quietly, she said, no press, no drama. But we'll bury him in documentation so airtight he won't even breathe in the boardroom. That night we built a war room. Lyra brought credentials, I brought architecture logs, and together, line by line, we traced the betrayal back to the source. By midnight, we didn't just have evidence. We had a roadmap to his fall. At 8:47 a.m., I submitted the audit report. No memo, no narrative, just data. An 81-page document cross-referenced by timestamp, user session, and system behavior. Appendices, screen captures, before and after states. A video walkthrough narrated by Lyra Connors herself. By 9:12, I received a read receipt from the audit chair. By 9:21, a second ping close session invite 10:00 a.m., boardroom 3F. At 9:58, I stepped into the coldest room in the building. 12 board members sat around an oval table. No smiles, no chatter. Nathan Greer sat at the far end, arms folded, eyes unreadable. And the chair beside him empty. No Miles Trent. I took my seat in the center. No laptop, just a tablet. Just truth. The audit chair cleared his throat. Ms. Park, we've reviewed your submission. You have 10 minutes to present any supplemental context. I tapped the tablet. The monitor behind me lit up. PulseSync's instability last week wasn't due to system limitations, I began. It was manufactured. Slide session ID logs, all pointing to Trent. He injected incompatible patient data into stripped-down sandbox environments, intentionally triggering diagnostic failures. Slide cleared error flags, then removed the internal warnings to simulate core failure. Slide pitch deck metadata. Finally, he packaged those failures into a presentation, claiming the system was outdated and opaque. A beat of silence. None of these tests occurred in production. They were simulations, controlled, deceptive. I let the room sit in it. No apology, no embellishment, just the stinging quiet of undeniable math. The audit chair nodded slowly. Are these findings corroborated? Lyra Connors from compliance led the log chain verification, I said. Her signature's on every page. One of the board members leaned forward. Is PulseSync currently stable? I met his eyes. Since reactivation, yes. We've restored all protocols, shut down sandbox exploits, full operational confidence. Then I looked directly at Nathan. And this isn't about egos, it's about ownership. What I built was never the problem. What you allowed it to become was. The chair didn't look at Nathan. He simply said, effective immediately. Dr. Trent's contract is suspended pending investigation. Ms. Park, we'd like a proposal for internal governance led by your team. I nodded. Not with triumph, with precision. The system didn't just speak for itself. It had finally been heard. At 11:03 a.m., the system flickered fully green. Diagnostics normalized. Inference speed stable. Alert frequency near zero. Hospital queries. Back to baseline. PulseSync didn't just recover. It reset like it knew who was holding the reins again. By 1:14 p.m., I received the formal offer. Position Director Advanced Systems Architecture. Reporting to CTO Board Authority Full Domain Control. Addendum attribution of EVA core to Elena Park across all materials. I read it once, then once more. I signed. Not for power, for permanence. At 6:10 p.m., I stood in the systems war room, the same one where I used to run simulations alone at 2 a.m. Now it hummed with life. People, motion, momentum. Raj hovered near the console pulling telemetry. Lisa from QA was syncing clinical flags. Even Miguel was back quiet, focused, watching for anomalies, with the eyes of someone who'd seen what happened when systems got into the wrong hands. And in the middle of it all, Lyra. She looked up when I entered. Thought you'd be upstairs in glass and leather now, she said dryly. Temporarily, I replied. I still trust this room more than any board. She smiled faintly. Then her eyes drifted to my screen, where I'd just opened a new branch. EVA Core V3, Training Set Access. Documentation folder. Open, notes clean, access list. 5 names. Mine wasn't one of them. Lyra raised an eyebrow. You're giving it away? No, I said, locking the branch. I'm teaching it forward. She studied me for a moment. After everything they did, especially after I said, systems don't evolve in shadows, and I'm not guarding this forever. She nodded, quiet respect, then turned back to her work. I watched the logs scroll by, not as a shield, not as a secret, but as something finally alive in full daylight. And outside the glass wall, I saw Ava walk past. This time she looked in, and nodded.